So, the first question is a really easy starter, because I think we've answered it. I'm going to start at that end. Do you want to tell us what you do, and then tell us why advanced advertising is so important in one sentence?
I'll just try and do that while I'm pouring my water. So, hi, my name's Matt Godsmark, and I work for Sky Media. I run our product propositions team, which looks after some really cool stuff at one end. So I work on new ad formats, and our innovation function, right the way through to how we package and go to market and make sure we sweat our existing capabilities.
And advanced advertising is super important because it's your job?
Yeah, one, because it's my job. So I suppose there's two reasons.
Yeah.
For TV. One, and we've seen this accelerate through our own data in the last couple of years, which is the fragmentation of viewing habits, particularly the acceleration of VOD. And two, because we know through doing it for a few years that it works.
Wonderful, thank you. Eve?
I'm Eve Thompson. I work at Wavemaker, which is an agency, and we work with clients to understand and build TV solutions. That's my job. I'm from a TV background. And advanced advertising, it's always been important. So in the UK, I think All 4 is now 16 years old this year. So we've been doing this for a long time. But it gives advertisers flexibility. It opens up that whole TV space. So you can spend and be in great programs with small budgets. You can talk to different audiences, and there's different ways for it to be measured. So lots of exciting things.
Wonderful. Erhard?
Yeah, my name is Erhard Neumann. I'm head of addressable TV for Unruly, and I'm managing director of Spirit. Spirit, a lot of you may not know him. It's a very young company, has been acquired by Unruly last autumn. We have been built an ad decisioning platform specially made for CTV and AVOD. We are managing complete ad breaks with all of the rule sets, transforming that from the linear side into the digital world. Yeah, that's about me. And the second part of your question is about why is it important? Why is it important?
This is going to get harder as we go along, I think.
I think it's when you see the change and the behavior of how to consume TV and with the younger generation, they are not living on a scheduled TV. They just live on a TV where they want to see the content when they want. And I think this is what the TV broadcasters needs to be aware of, and if they are not going and changing in this, they would probably run into troubles in the future.
Great. Barney?
Hi, my name is Barney Farmer. I'm the commercial director for Nielsen in the UK on the measurement side. So we provide a set of solutions measuring who's advertising where and when and who the audience are that are seeing those. I'm trying to be creative now because I'm going to just end up repeating what everyone else says. But I think to reiterate some of the other points, audiences are fragmenting. Obviously, particularly younger audiences are being driven towards watching content whenever they want to, wherever they want to. And the reason that market is only ever going to grow, and advertisers will follow where the eyeballs are.
Fantastic. And last, but definitely not least, Mikkel?
Hi, I'm Michael Eklöf. I work at TV4 with business development and strategy. I don't know what to add to what everyone already said, but for us it's mostly about reinventing TV and transitioning a traditional linear business into a new total TV business and being able to deliver reach and ratings across 4 screens and expanding our ad portfolio and our products and adding data and everything. So.
Great. I'm super excited by this panel. Right, the next question, because I used to be a consultant, is about definitions, but I want to have a quick show of hands first. How many people would like or need the panel to try and define what we mean by advanced advertising? Hands up if you would like the panel to define it. Good Lord. It's a very small minority, so I'm afraid crib it from your colleagues and we'll make it up as we go along. But we're going to dive straight into timescales in that case. We've heard quite a lot about it today. Advanced advertising projects take a really long time. It's your lifeblood. Why don't we start with you again? Why? What is the delay? What makes a typical project take such an enormous long period of time? Years, in some cases.
I mean, that is a huge question.
Sure.
And to give a bit of context, I think we made the decision at Sky to launch AdSmart in something like 2008, probably a bit sooner than that. We launched it at the end of 2013, and it's kind of still at a stage where it's maturing, but it's still double-digit growth every year. So we're still working out kind of how it works. We're still developing the product. At the point of launch, we'd spent something like £15 million on that project. And that is for the key reason that we're building new technology to enable delivery of ads into initially 7 and now 10 million homes in the UK. And that does just take time. And it takes a huge amount of investment as well. And remember, there's this kind of, the buy and the sell side have to come together and work out kind of what's going to work. And there's a bit of a gamble involved when you're investing that amount of money. And we kind of were fairly confident that it would work. We'd seen some evidence from the US that it would work, but we were still quite early. So yeah, technology just takes time and money.
So it's scale and complexity in a sense is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Erhard, why don't we jump with you, because obviously you work for a tech firm. Is it your experience that these projects generally take a long time, and are you on the same page about why?
You know, time is relative when you see like this. If you think about how long do we have the traditional TV, then it's not that long when we talk about the connected TV now. It's a lot of things has to do with, is the device available? Is the technology available? And all of those things. And I think it took quite a long time. You know, we also need to have the audience available just to see, is the money that you are going to spend into this, is this well spent, and so on. I personally think it's not taking that long. I'm more thinking of we need to improve what we currently have. I think we need to work on all of those tiny little bits and pieces to make it better. I personally think we have been done great steps in the last 3-4 years. Connected TV, addressable TV is working. Even in Germany, you know, we are a bit smaller. We are always a bit behind when it comes to, you know, the GDPR stuff that is going to be hindering us with a lot of stuff on the addressable TV. But I personally think we are not, in general, spending too much time to develop all of these things.
Mikael, is some of this to do with hardware versus software? I mean, you mentioned some of the older Sky boxes, and obviously updating the software in the box was complex. Now, with software-based platforms much more common, it's becoming easier? Faster?
Yes and no. It's becoming fast, but there are new dependencies because in broadcast television, our dependencies is with the operators and negotiating channel packages and everything else. Now there's new dependencies. There are smart TV manufacturers, the Samsungs, the LGs, and the Androids and the Apple TV devices and the HBB TV solutions and the set-top boxes and all the legacy. So there are new dependencies in creating addressable inventory. And that makes it quite complex.
Okay. Measurement is definitely one area that people complain moves too slowly. I seem to recall a measurement executive saying you can either be fast or you can be right, but it's hard to be both. Give us a sense of why measurement takes so long to evolve.
I think measurement takes so long because it's quite fragmented. I mean, you're trying to work with multiple players, and this guy's gone down the route of building it in his own way, and I understand why they do it that way. If you were talking to other suppliers, they will say the same thing, and they've all come up against the same challenges. And we have it for trying to keep uniformity. And so you can either try and do it and get something out there, or you can try and do it right. And I suppose most measurement companies of credibility will try and do it the right way and get data out there or measurement solutions out there that are credible and that stand up to test of time.
So Eve, on the speed question finally, do you think the buy side would like the sell side to move faster, or do you understand the reasons that these gentlemen have given as to why this stuff takes time?
Well, we definitely want it to move faster, and we get a lot of pressure from advertisers because they want to know what's the incremental reach of my campaign, what's the duplicated frequency. But I agree, there's no point doing it if we can't trust what it's going to come out with. That's why it's taken Barb so long. Dovetail, they started doing that a long time ago. We've just had some things out now. Sea Flight's taken a long time. Origin, the next step, will take 2 years. And it's only worthwhile if we can trust the data that we're using, and that's what we need to report back to our advertisers. If it's not right, it's not worth having.
And is that more, that's a measurement point in a sense, is that more generally true about other categories of advanced advertising, you know, addressable advertising, data-enabled inventory, et cetera, as in would buyers be happy to go faster?
But it depends. I think it needs to be we've got to make sure what we're buying is accurate and it's right. It's also fragmented. So is it a completed view? Is it a portion of a view? There's so much difference when we're taking old linear metrics and newer digital metrics. But we want to trust what we're giving our advertisers. So that's why Barb, it's very important to them that it's gold standard and that the measurement system is reliable.
So, lurking underneath lots of this, I feel, is the importance of collaboration. And we heard Paola talk about it earlier. It was more important to go together than it was difficult to go slowly. Sky's obviously been at the centre of some very exciting collaborations, most recently C-Flight. Give us a sense of how those collaborations work in terms of time to move. Does it take a very long time to get the parties joined up to back something like C-Flight?
I mean, I think you obviously start from slightly different positions,
Sure.
but we've got, particularly in the, because remember, first of all, we're a platform owner, but we're also a broadcaster and one of 3 TV sales houses in the UK, and that's still our core business. So collaboration, which we do a lot of via Thinkbox with ITV and Channel 4 to set and maintain standards is important. You know, Eve touched on a couple of the industry projects there, which have either gone too slow or haven't quite worked out for broadcasters, and we've been unanimous on that kind of position for whatever reason. We kind of drove the market with C-Flight via the US as our own proposition to start with, and the industry has picked that up, and the core methodology for that's now available in a really, really basic form. Via TechEdge, and there's a series of developments. And just to get aligned for 3 competitors, essentially, to get around the table and align on something, just takes some time. And again, it's not an insignificant challenge. First of all, aligning on the methodology, but making sure that we're not colluding on the methodology, for instance. And secondly, actually making that happen with the necessary third-party auditing, verification, etc., you know, is important, and it's not quick. But we are committed to doing things right. Is my overarching view on that.
I think you've been involved in some collaborations as well.
Sure.
To roll out advanced advertising propositions, is that your experience as well, that it just takes time, plus this stuff is complicated, and you add more parties to the mix, and everything is just going to slow down?
Yeah, and I mean, one difficulty when it comes to measurement is that the traditional broadcasters isn't enough for the buyers. They want to measure YouTube and all the other publishers, and in a sense, in the whole, to get the whole reach. And then it becomes really difficult because the online publishers have other definitions of what is an impression, how long should it be viewed, and everything else. And that's the real complexity, I think. But we're getting there in Sweden, at least. We have online publishers on board. We're doing a proof of performance with YouTube. We're changing to a single source panel with Nielsen. So there is progress in that area as well. But it has taken some time. We've had digital measurements in Sweden for the past 12 years. And we don't really have the full total TV measurement yet, but hopefully this year.
There are obviously buy-side collaborations as well. I guess Project Origin, for example, which obviously has Facebook and Google and some other parties, but it's predominantly driven by the ANA, and ISBA. That's taken a very long time to get rolling. Again, can you tell us about the negotiation point? Has that been a sticky wicket? Do you know much about it?
I think it's so we're helping them build that, and we're consulting with them as an agency, but there's many different agencies, so there's lots of the agencies are involved, lots of media owners. There's just so many people, and there's lots of different points. So what we want is not necessarily what the sellers want. We've just all got to feed into that and try and work out what's the best thing that we can do, and then it just costs an absolute astronomical amount of money,
right,
and people to achieve it. So it's a really ambitious target, and everybody wants that. But C-Flight at the moment, we're testing that. I've run some reports the other day, and it is fairly basic at the moment, but it's brilliant. It's miles away from what we've ever had before. So we're getting there, but that only comes with collaboration.
And Erhard, a lot of what you do requires collaboration. You need multiple parties to climb on board. Are there obvious tricks to speeding these things up? Are there things you've learned that have made it easier?
I haven't learned anything to make it easier, but the takeaway, what we have seen in the last 2 years is when you work together on the sell side and on the demand side, you see that the demand side tries just to put their bids in the same way as they did it on the website. So they haven't been really digging into the CTV world. You see it sometimes on the pricing, you see it sometimes on the highly hyper-targeted campaigns that they are owning and try to move them onto the CTV side where when you put in 3, 4, 5 targeting criteria, the audience isn't available. So I think there is something learning that needs to be done on the demand side. And I think it's also on the agency side. We see that when we talk to agencies where they put their PMPs to our platform, we just tell them, put 1 or 2 targeting onto it, it's enough. And even better, take the same campaign, take it a smaller volume, and try to run it on reach and make this combination and then learn from the data from the reach and learn from the data that you get from the targeted campaigns and then see how you can optimize it. I think there's a lot of things that from the buy side, and I mean it from the programmatic side and from the agency side, is still to learn.
Barney, measurement is a team sport, as people never tire of saying. Are there things you've learned along the way about making these collaborations work better, faster, more seamlessly, less friction?
I think people feeding in and simplifying things often helps. It does need compromise as well, because the agendas of different parties don't typically align from the top, so you're then trying to get to a commonality as you move down the funnel. And there has to be patience, but at some point then people have to take a view that this is what is good enough to go to the market, and in some ways going out with a simple solution, first of all, it gives them a lot more than what they had prior, is the best way to go, more than waiting for the holy grail of this commonality for everyone. I mean, I think there's always still even arguments you go around about the definitions, about what you're actually trying to measure. Getting all that agreed is, I mean, even if you go back to just even, they started talking about doing traditional digital measurement and talking about just standard display 20 years ago, and we still haven't got to something besides the impression beyond that. So there was still, but whereas now, as the TV world collides with the connected TV world, I think we've got better definitions there to work from.
I think an agency friend of mine in the States said recently to me that we mustn't let the impossibility of perfection stand in the way of the quest for progress, bitty steps, which is obviously a cliche, but it seems useful at this point. Yes. Right. Large numbers of the people here are desperately looking for quick wins to take back to their bosses so they can hang on to their jobs while these quick wins are executed. Talk to us a bit about whether there are in your view, quick, obvious things that you don't really understand why the buy side isn't doing more consistently. Are there obvious advanced advertising products that we could bring to market much more rapidly than we are, or actually not really? I mean, you go through this process, I suspect, regularly at Sky, thinking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we do, and I kind of think of stuff that we bring to market in a couple of buckets, and one is the kind of iterative. How do you use those capabilities to deliver certain propositions, and the other is kind of more new stuff. I think there is, if I was to name a couple of things, I would be, first of all, think about and it's interesting, the presentation we saw before where the broad audience was worth nothing and the core audience, because it's never worth nothing, certainly not in the UK, because we sell audiences, not spots. We have to think more about the blend of broadcast and addressable, because that's what it's getting that blend right that really powers the best outcomes, both in terms of reach, frequency management, brand metrics, outcomes. We see that getting that blend right is what the most important thing is. So lean into that conversation is number one. Number two, there's a lot of noise about enablement of first-party data. And if I can't use my own data, it's rubbish. If I can't use my own data, well, this product's not going to work unless I can upload my CRM database and target all the people on it with a TV ad. The reality is that that's an interesting proposition. If you've got tons of data, yeah, you can upload it and target 20% of your base. It's an interesting proposition if you're committed to if you've got less and you're committed to doing the profiling and taking those learnings, but it's not the be all and the end all. One thing we do need to do though is make that a bit easier, I think, because pre-GDPR it was quite difficult and scary. Post-GDPR, in some areas it got even more difficult, but in some ways it got easier because certainly businesses were much clearer about what they were permitted and comfortable with doing. But I think we just need to, on the sell side, we could probably do a bit better at helping to enable those capabilities and helping advertisers leverage their first-party data.
And in part, you'll think about data standardization. So in the States, for example, not every broadcaster uses the same demos, which is just sort of pointless. There's no competitive advantage particularly associated with that. It's just frustrating for the buyers. Are those the sorts of things you're thinking about? Or?
Less so, because I think certainly in the UK and Europe, we've got a handful of third-party data providers, which are really kind of gold standard in the currency. You know, you could all list them. You know, Experian for socio-demographics or MasterCard for purchase data, and that you can buy these anywhere. And I mean, the beauty of that is that a buyer can turn up and go, I'd like to buy a broad audience on addressable TV. I'd like to buy a MasterCard audience on addressable TV, which is the same audience as I'm using to buy my online display or my short form video. So we've kind of can already get to some level of mimicry or consistency throughout a media plan, I think. It was more, I was thinking about demystifying some of these capabilities around how we leverage first, or how we help businesses and advertisers leverage first-party data. It's really powerful if you've got it and you think about it in the right way. It's not the be-all and the end-all. You don't have to be doing that certainly in this market, you can do really good stuff with targeted TV without that, across multiple providers as well.
Okay, Michael, from your point of view, are there any obvious quick wins for a business that's looking to bring new advanced advertising propositions to market? You know, housekeeping, as some of which have been suggested, that can just make this work easier?
No, I think it's about testing fast and failing fast. I mean, test if it works. If it doesn't work, then scrap it and move on. And really dare to test things and change things around, but you can always go back and rework stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's automated in some way and doesn't require labor-intense manual stuff.
Okay. Erhard, from your point of view, you obviously talked to lots of media owners and buyers. Are there quick, easy things that they can be doing to make it easier to roll out advanced advertising propositions in your experience?
When I look into what I was thinking about these questions, what the quick wins are, is more I would like to go to what Mika said is we can learn a lot about this data, what we are collecting, because it's compared to the old data from a traditional panel. We just got the data much quicker. We got much more details. We can optimize the campaigns much faster. We can react much faster compared to the old way. So there's no reason for publisher and broadcaster to hold, or for advertiser to hold back on this. Make those tests, get your campaigns up and running. Don't forget that you spread the view also on reach, and make this experience. And the same stuff should be done on the demand side as well. So I can only say publisher, advertiser, agencies, demand side go together and try to find out what is the easiest way to get the data back, get your campaigns being optimized, and then you will see how easy it is to run them.
Okay. Barney, anything you would add from an easy win point of view before we get to the long-term ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I talk from just a sort of slightly personal, selfish perspective of Nielsen, so in the States, we've created one-to-one integrations with some of the broadcasters and the newer platforms to measure them individually. So they're reporting for themselves. It's not cross-comparability, but it's got something out there that's got, and it's following the same process in theory, with most of the data that's provided. You just can't cross-compare it at the moment. So that has been a quick win for those guys. They're getting data out, they're getting some sort of reporting independently verified to help advertisers trust the data and trust the medium as well.
Right. So Eve, I've deliberately come to you last. It's Monday morning, you turn up at work, and everyone in agency land likes to have a good grumble from time to time. What are the kind of common grumbles where you and your colleagues in agency land are sitting there going, why can't they just sort this out? It looks so easy.
I think
What comes up?
there's a lot of things. So from what you hear from advertisers is it's super complicated. I think a lot of the time we talk in language that no one actually understands. We have to keep it simple, and we have to keep the advertisers' needs and their outcomes, that should be front and centre of everything we do. And this is just one part of it. So the connected TV world is just one part of their plan. It's a big part, but there are other things that they have to do. So we have to work out what is it that they want. So that's where we need some help from media owners. And it's talking to the right people. We're also guilty of it as agencies. Do you talk to a ex-digital, or what does digital even mean now? Or do you talk to the TV people? There's lots of crossovers. I'm looking at you because you're Sky. But there's lots of crossovers between us in TV, but also all the products that you have out there in other Sky. You know what we can do. So yeah, simplicity, keep the outcomes front and centre. That's really important to us.
Why do we call it advanced advertising then? If we are
Scratch
keeping
my
it
head,
simple.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
do we need 500 MasterCard targeting options?
At least.
Or I don't know. If the answer is keep it simple.
But I think it's explaining what we're doing. Yeah. We have this kind of, we like to make things more complicated. And we're learning that in the agency that I work in, actually go the other way.
just briefly, Matt, one of your former colleagues said to me that he gets very frustrated with buyers complaining about sell-side fragmentation because the agencies are themselves very fragmented in terms of their wants and asks. And if they could just all align a bit more on certain things, the world would be much easier. Do you agree or not your experience?
A salesperson complaining about their customers. Okay.
Quietly, namelessly.
As an ex-colleague. So it's interesting what Eve said there. It's often a challenge that is levelled at us because we've spent a lot of time creating lots of different products which have sat in silos, sold by different people. One of the key reasons for AdSmart being so successful is that we had dedicated salespeople on the ground talking in detail, because I was one of them, talking in detail to senior agencies and advertisers about how this stuff actually works. What that created was kind of multiple sales teams, multiple products. At one point, we had 4 different propositions which had 4 different names which were aimed at maximising reach, for instance. That's 4 different things. So someone like Eve and her team comes along and goes, who do we talk to in Sky? I think we're in a fairly unique position because of the kind of business that we are on that front. And also sort of how successful we've been with some of those new products. I don't think I necessarily agree with the complaint about agencies being fragmented, because I do think agencies have worked fairly hard for as long as I can remember. And again, they've tried it in different ways, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't, at trying to consolidate different functions. So there is less overlap and it is less confusing. My experience is I don't have to speak to 8 different people at a media agency to figure out what a client is doing. Whereas someone at a media agency might have to speak to 8 different people. Not anymore, to be fair. But in the past, may have had to speak to 8 different people at Sky to work out what was going on. And I imagine with some of our some of our big digital competitors, that 8 might be 28.
I suspect you're right. Okay, let's jump on and talk about long-term priorities then. So I was speaking to someone very smart over lunch, and they said long-term priorities, there are basically 4 of them. There's addressability and data enablement, which they were counting as 1. There's measurement, or better measurement. There's attributions and outcomes. Addressability, data enablement, improved measurement, and then attribution and outcomes as before. Does that feel like the right 4 long-term priorities? Does that basically cover most of what's going on? Is there anything missing in those buckets?
Yeah, roughly, I think.
Broadly.
I mean, if you think about... Sorry, I'm just carrying on here because you were,
No,
'cause you were
go
looking
on.
at me.
No, I think education and
That's
training,
the
because basic marketing skills.
As a layer underneath those.
Yeah, and how media works and how you build brands and all that. I think that's a piece that's missing with all the new people coming in with digital background. Just how does media work? Reach, frequency, building brands, affecting brands, creative impact on outcomes and stuff like that. I think that's missing, and I think we need to train the professionals even more.
And there were some interesting comments about that this morning, I thought, in terms of the need to train up teams to really sell this stuff in an integrated way in lots of cases.
Because now it's running DSPs and you set the KPIs and it's all technical.
Don't forget creativity, though, as well.
Right.
So that's another thing we have to think
Yeah.
about. Is it a 30-second? Is that piece of copy right on linear? Is it right somewhere else? Is it a shorter time length? Is it a longer time length? So I think that's really important because it's still all storytelling wherever it sits. So I think personally that's something that has to be really important for wherever it ends up.
Yeah, and this ends up into, are we taking care enough about the viewer? Because we want to make the viewer the old TV-like experience where everything runs perfect. There's no duplicated ads. They are all on the same quality. All of those stuff that we are knowing for many, many years. And now we see in let's say on an AVOD, we see 30 seconds, 40-second ads, which is far too long when you dial your content. You don't want to see that. And the worst thing that can happen if you see the same ad over and over again. And this is not a frequency capping problem. This is a problem for hyper-targeting, because you don't have enough other ads available that meets what I call the reach on connected TV. And lastly, we need to solve that from a technology point of view. We are always talking about the user ID, the one common user ID. We should talk about one common ad ID. That can help us just to say, okay, this ad has a unique ID, and this unique ID is going to be shown wherever it comes. It comes programmatically or it comes from the agency, and then the ad decisioning machine, we developed it in that way, can now take a holistic decision and say, I have this ad, and I have a competition ad against, and I have this, and then we take a whole decision over the whole pod or the ad break, and I think that's the quality, what we need to serve the viewer. This is really something that gets underestimated. If the viewer runs away from the publisher uses this portion of money. And if that happens too often, that's it.
So training, creativity, the consumer experience and the ad ops that can support that and maintain it in TV. Barney, I think you wanted to come in with something.
I was going to say also, I think you've also got to add in the mix privacy, that before you even get to the rest of it, because the cookie is disappearing and it's not coming back. And how are you going to make sure that the user is protected in the way they're supposed to be? So I think before all of that, you could even add that layer in. But once we get through that, I think the possibilities are infinite.
And what Erhard mentioned with the creative ID, that would also enable measurement, because you would measure the ad, not the person, and then you can modulate the person through a panel or that would
you
save
can measure
privacy.
it across all broadcasters, publishers, all channels, and that would give much
better
information on all of this.
And particularly, you're talking about creative IDs or ad IDs that will work across both TV and...
Yeah, across all types of media.
Matt, you've heard a lot there, which is added to those 4 areas. What's your thought? Does that broadly... are there things that you're working on that you can tell us about that don't neatly fit into any of those broad buckets?
No, most of the things that we're working on, the fundamentals do fit into those broad buckets. It's scale is hugely important to us. When I talked about that sort of blend of linear and addressable to an advertiser, that becomes viable thinking about it in that way if you can do the targeted bit at a reasonable scale. And so, we'll be enabling now with addressable targeting. Glass will be enabled with addressable targeting later this year. And also our direction of travel through one campaign is that we're going to see the world as buying an audience across all platforms. So we went last year, something like 50% of our VOD inventory was targeting enabled, and next year it'll be 80 or so. Or at the end of this year, it'll be something like 80. I think the really kind of cool stuff outside of the fundamentals that we're doing is how can we kind of turn kind of the advertising on TV on its head by developing new formats that are delivered in different ways. And again, we're in a fortunate position that we've launched a consumer product in Glass, which is IP delivered, so everything is one-to-one, everything is streamed, and there's all sorts of stuff that we're working on. Like, what do we do with pause ads, for instance? How are people actually going to interact with that platform outside of streaming stuff, either live or on demand? So there's loads of kind of new stuff, I call it, that we're working on, which is not a pre-roll or a mid-roll.
How far ahead does your roadmap go? I mean, how many years forward are you making plans for, given the lead times on some of this?
I'd like to say it's really far ahead. Probably, we roughly know what we're going to do for the rest of this year, I hope. Touching a lot. No, we probably have a pretty clear idea of what we're going to do through to the end of 2023, and then some aspirations kind of 24, 25.
So we are running perilously short of time. We have 3.5 minutes left by my watch. Quick, I have a few more questions to ask these folks. Does anyone else have any questions you'd like to ask these good people? There's a prize for the best question. There's a prize for any question. There's no questions. Okay, there's no questions. Right. Let's do the final predictions bit. So, fast forward, it's 2025. What stuff today, which is still in test and learn stage, do you think would have successfully made its way into the mass advertising market? Do you want to have a go?
Oh, I think we will probably sell all our products across 4 screens.
Right. So we'll have
transforming all the traditional linear audiences, rating-based products into cross device delivery.
Which certainly, I mean, given some of the timescales on measurement we talk about, seems realistic.
Yeah. I mean, in the broader perspective, I would say I think that I presume that AVOD is going to expand and it's going to increase, and I think there's only one way. The trajectory is going one way. I think you're also going to see it's going to get more complex in the thing. I imagine Netflix, or what they've announced, Disney Plus, will probably look at the ad model as well, because there is revenue there to be made, and they need to find new channels for it. So there's my predictions. I think the measurement situation will be different in every country.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be uniform across the world, and I think it's going to go at different paces, and we're going to get to. I think in some ways, I think some of these smaller markets may land up actually getting something out first, because they can get more consensus quicker, whereas in some of the larger markets, you're always going to have too many parties that maybe can't agree.
Lots of agencies said to me that it was a low moment when, first of all, in the US, one major network announced their measurement partnership with VideoAmp, and then because they want to do something different, the next one announced iSpot, and then the next one announced Samba. So we're just as fragmented as we were, if not more so. But anyway, Erhard, 3 years forwards, what's going to be mass market but is still in test and learn or early stage today? Are there things which stand out?
I personally think that, we have been learning a lot about the projection of the traditional linear. It will be stable. I think it will go down a bit more than that what we have been seeing, and everything is going more into the connected TV world. What I see a little bit is we should not make any more difference between the big screen and what we see on let's say on a normal computer, because we make a lot of difference there of seeing that we are using big screens in the office or in the home office. So I think we should try to get these things more together. It gives us a bit more data, and it gives us a bit more pricing, higher pricing when we talk about the campaigns and so on. So I think these devices should come more better together, and it will be. I have a little bit of a problem, and when we see the update of the connected TVs. You know, there needs to be SDKs, there needs to be other firmware updates to be done, and people are not intending to replace their CTV like they do it with a mobile phone. So I'm not quite sure if we're always being behind or if we are ahead of the market, but I think the technology stuff is making me a little bit of a headache.
Okay. Eve?
I'm going to do it as a wish list. So as a TV buyer, I'd like to be able to buy across different suppliers with Netflix and Disney in there, hopefully, and have the measurement to prove what they're all doing and what they're adding to a plan, whether that's in the exposure metrics or outcome metrics, but looking at more granular audiences.
Great. Matt?
Noted. So I think a few things. I think first of all, penetration of kind of targeted TV advertising, and driven in part by that, or as long as there is that data standardization, will be much higher. I think we'll be very close to cracking, if not already cracked, kind of at the very least, kind of across TV and VOD measurement. And I think market adoption of addressable TV and VOD, because I do think that's what I think it'll be the same thing by 2025, will be kind of, you know, close to 100%. I think it'll be BAU, how you blend that broadcast and targeted on TV, and we're still getting there now.
It's going to be an exciting 3 years. Panel, thank you very much. That draws this session to an end. I think we reconvene in here in half an hour.